You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Welcome back to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today is a master storyteller and the visionary behind Heritage Films. He is a proud veteran and a family legacy preservationist. Chance McClain, we are so glad to have you with us.
Hey guys, I'm ecstatic to be here. Thank you guys.
Absolutely. So to dive right in, you have such a unique thing that you do. So tell our listeners a little bit about your film company and then give us a little bit on about your background. What really inspired you to start this business and get into this industry?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So Heritage Films, I've been doing this since 2015. And I'll actually start with what got me into it. My background is erratic and crazy. I worked in radio for a long time, and then had a film company doing TV commercials and internet videos and things like that before I started this. But a buddy of mine, his father was turning 75, and he said, "Hey, can you bring a camera over and just, have my dad talk about growing up in East Texas?" And I'm like, sure, I guess. Anyway, that is literally how it started, was through a friend. And I sat down and visited with him about his background. And that, an hour conversation turned into a 5-hour conversation, and it was a lot of fun. And that is where the company started. And now since then, we've done about 800 films all over the country. We started here in Houston and now operate everywhere where people live.
That's awesome. That is really cool. So tell us a little bit more specifically about some of the films that you've done, some of the stories of these people and these families that you've worked with. What does that process of, if someone's interested in doing this, what does that process of working with you really look like?
Sure. I think one of the things that's special is it's generally the second generation or third generation that contacts me. Somebody calls me and says, "My mom's my hero. She's the best human being that's ever been born. I love her, and I want her values and her stories passed down to my kids and then eventually their kids." And I think that's a key component of what makes it work so very well. It's that it's pre-qualified to be awesome people. They don't call me when they say, "My dad is a monster. I hate him. He was abusive. He's evil. Hey, let's make a movie." It's really preconditioned to be fantastic people, the type of people that are out there and probably your own friends talk about. But when you just watch the news or see things, you forget just exactly how much of this country is awesome, fantastic, loving people. And so they contact me and share what we're capable of doing. Our process is it's not a 60 minutes interview. It's not a Q&A. I don't send the questions ahead of time. They fill out some forms, so I'm going to know about the person or people that I'm going to be visiting with. And then we go have an authentic, legitimate conversation. They forget the cameras are even there. One of our other crew will be scanning in pictures and things like that, but it's all copacetic. It's laid back, it's fun, even when we discuss really challenging things that happen in people's lives, if they're willing to talk about it. There's a thing on the form that says, "Hey, any landmines we want to avoid?" Because every family has them. But even when they do talk about the tough stuff, we still try to bring what is the silver lining? What did we learn from this loss? What did we learn from this hard thing? And what do you want your kids and grandkids and their grandkids to learn from it? So it's a net very, very positive experience. It's fun. We don't just hit the highlights. A lot of the most exciting things we talk about are off the beaten path. They're the nuanced things about growing up in the 50s or 60s or 70s that all the big pivot things, the things that get written in the family Bible, the births, the deaths, the new big jobs, the moves. Of course, we cover all that stuff. But the little stuff you get to see or hear about, I feel like is just as important. And like when we're talking to a couple, it's not just the stories, but sometimes it's while mom is telling the story and dad just reaches over and puts his hand on her knee. And that is communicating to the family too. You see their relationship and things like that. And to Stan's point from earlier, it is visual. You don't get that in a book. You don't get that in a writing. You see it, and you see the sly smiles, and if you can't tell, I absolutely love what I do.
No, I can see that passion. And I love this. This is something that Stan and I have discussed before. And for those of you listening to the podcast, you've heard us discuss kind of this idea of recorded interviews and getting some of these things done. I think the really cool thing, and of course, you, Chance, have cornered the market and taken this to a new level, but we are really in kind of some of these first generations where this technology exists and we have the ability to have these interviews and capture a lot of this stuff. You know, growing up, I was very close to my great grandmother who passed many years ago now. And this is not, I don't have a recording of her voice. I don't have her on videotape. I do have her in some of my old pictures, but what I wouldn't give to have had an interview with her like this, or with my grandfather that passed not too long before I was born that I never even got to know. How I just think about how powerful that would be for me personally to be able to have something like this recorded. So it really is bridging these kind of generations and being able to, for my generation to drag our parents, and for those of us that still have grandparents, drag them in and sit them down and really capture all of this information. And the key here we try to stress when we talk to people about this is to capture it before it's too late, while they still remember these powerful family stories. And I know that you've done over 800 documentaries. So what are your takeaways? What are some of the things you have learned from doing 800 plus of all of these powerful moving films for families?
Well, gosh, there's no end to the things that I've learned. It's changed me as a person more than, I don't have words how much. From when I started, they were just gigs. It was like, I was doing a TV commercial here, and then, I'm going to go do one of these heritage things. And then maybe 20 or 30 films in, I started kind of paying attention, because we get to the point of what's some advice for your kids, for your grandkids. And then I started listening to it and applying it. And to answer your question directly, so much of what you quote learn, you already know. And it's the stuff that you see in places like Proverbs. It's simple. It's very simple stuff, but applied earnestly. The golden rule is real, but it can't just be a platitude. You got to really do it. That's something that I've learned from people, that you can say you don't have regrets, but 800 people, there are regrets back there, but a common thread between all of them is they still wouldn't change a thing. Even though there was hiccups along the way, they now know, because they've got time to look back and reflect, that sadly that had to happen for me to get here, for me to get to the point where my daughter has decided my life needs to be put on a film. That's a giant win for the subject, and they recognize that.
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. I can't imagine, Stan and I, we rarely do a podcast with anybody where when it's done, one of us doesn't call or text the other one and say, wow, I just learned so much, or that was so powerful. And those are just in short little podcasts. So I can only imagine the type of wisdom you've really been able to glean from all of these different, people that are older and wiser, and they've lived these really unique lives, and you get to be a part of that experience. That sounds really, really cool. And I know I'm taking up all of the good questions. So Stan, I will be quiet now and let you ask Chance a question.
Yeah, so my questions are really going to trend toward practical questions. I just can't imagine anybody listening to this podcast who wouldn't be thinking, oh my gosh, I really want to do this. But one of the fears they may have is that, boy, this sounds really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like you to do is to talk a little bit about the different ways you do this, like length and how much editing goes into it, how long the end result is, what are the different variations of how you do it, and what kind of investments required on the part of the family to make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to discuss. So there is, like everything, there's an introductory, there's a, whatever you call it, there's a basic package for whether it's a single person or two people, dad or mom and dad, and there's 1 day or 2 day. But the simplest version is it's 10 grand plus I got to get there for the basic thing. And what that ends up generating is everything we do is feature length. So think an hour plus, hour to 2 hours or 2 hours and change. So if it's a 1 day film, we may visit for 4 hours of conversation. Again, I don't like to call it an interview. We visit for 4 hours, and that 4 hours gets turned into a 1 hour actual. I'm telling you, these things, it's beginning, middle, and end. You could look my bookshelf. I love story. I love the concept and the belief of Campbellian story, a beginning, middle, and end. Highs, lows, emotional highs and lows throughout. We bring all that in via this conversation. But at the basic level, it's I spend a day with dad, and it's 10 grand plus we got to get there. And then we have other families that are much more expansive productions that they want. And we don't push, there's no salesmanship. I tell people what we do, and then they decide what's right for them. But there's films where we've gone to multiple states. We are in the middle of a film now that's sending us to Dubai, Mumbai, Antwerp, and London. And we've already been to San Francisco and Phoenix. So there are massive projects too. But at the end of the day, it's not, this one is going to have 50 hours of filming. It's still going to be a 2 hour movie. We want to create something that people are watching. This isn't just for posterity. This is a movie. And when I started the company, I thought that it would be, put on a stick and tucked away in a safety deposit box for that terrible time, that terrible eventuality that we all end up facing. And that just hasn't been the case at all. Families watch them. When it's the holiday season, it's on in the background. There's dad up there, dad is sitting here and the TV's on. Dad is proud of it because we apply all of the traditional Hollywood. We're not doing anything fancy. We have really good equipment. We frame them up in frame, in focus, in a manner that we're used to seeing on documentaries or on the news. It's standard stuff. We do pan and scans of all the pictures so that when you're talking about the 1970 Mustang that you got on your 16th birthday, we've got a picture of the Mustang and it's animated, it's moving on the screen. Little things like that we apply, very traditional stuff. And then you mentioned the edit process at the most basic level. We go film for a day. We film dad for a day or mom and dad for 2 days. We bring all that back to our studio here in Northwest Houston, and it takes us about 6 weeks. We have a team of people that edit it, and it takes us about 6 weeks, and we're done. And we think we've absolutely crushed it and made the best movie ever. We send you a review, but it's not done because we're human, and we may spell Uncle Bob's name wrong, and you get to watch the whole film and be like, hey, believe it or not, Bob spells it B-O-B-B. Well, we're going to make the corrections that you tell us. Or another common one, and I can actually share an anecdote with you. We did this film in like 2018 or so, and dad told a story about my client. There was my client. My client had an older brother. And dad told a story about the older brother who wet the bed well beyond when it's normal for a young person to wet the bed, like into double digits of age. And as dad was telling the story, there's tears rolling down his face. He is laughing so hard about his boy who was a bedwetter. And whenever we sent the review to my client, doesn't use the little tool that we have. Instead, he's calling me. He's like, Chance, you got to take that out. My brother is still messed up about that. So there's a review process. It's a long way of saying that it's not just misspellings, very often context. We want to make sure that we land the plane, and it's going to take the executive producer of the film, which in our universe, that's the client. In Hollywood, the executive producer does two things. They approve the film and they pay for it. So the person that hires us gets to get final approval.
So Chance, you've been doing this long enough now, and you've done, over 800 of these.
Yes, sir.
I'm guessing at this point, you have some stories to tell about the kind of impact this work has had on families.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely do. Endless stories. Now that I know what you guys do, well, I could sidestep one for 1 second and say it's not only just, the 65 plus crowd. There's a large part of our business that's people that are terminal, and some terminal things are not necessarily age related. I've done more films than I'd care to share of people younger than me, and I'm 52, and brain cancer, things like that. And what's amazing is when people know that the end is coming, they get real wise, they get real open. So it's not just time that makes us wise. I think the knowledge of the inevitable wisens people up too. But as far as to answer your question directly, gosh, individual stories of people who of fractured relationships. You know, families are families. They're complicated, right? And
Oh yeah.
there's, yeah, had a story of a guy who had not so the guy hired me, another guy with his brother, but the guy hired me and we filmed Dad. Well, the guy and his brother hadn't spoken since he was about 20 years old, and my client was like 60. Dad was 80 something. And we go through this whole process, and he hasn't spoken to his brother in 40 years. And they, by the way, their relationship was fractured over something absolutely stupid, like a girl, a chick. That's what made them decide that they hate each other. For 40 years, they both went on to be successful people. Like this isn't some trailer situation. These are great, normal, wonderful people. Well, we did the film, and the dad is just pissed. He hates that this has happened to his family, and he said as much in the film. Finished the film, sent it, all super happy. Dad ends up sending a copy to the son, and that family ended up bonding. And I'm gonna cry. He sent
You're getting to me here.
I'm telling you, he sent a picture of him and his brother watching the film, watching this awesome day that I spent with his dad. So yeah, they're not just for posterity. They serve a function. They serve a purpose.
I've noticed also you've got some other versions of this you do, like for young people, like for what do you call it when you do a year in the life of your teenager
Oh,
kind of story?
oh gosh, year flicks. Yes, sir. So this is something we had been working about 5 or 6 years, and my wife, who works, she does all the money. She works with me. She's like, baby, you think people love doing films about mom and dad? Don't you wish we had something of Noah and Abby, our kids, growing up? So it's studio based here in the office where I am in Northwest Houston, where people bring their kids in from 6 up through college age, and they come back every year, and we have some cool studio situation where they basically talk to a teleprompter. So they're in a studio by themselves, except for instead of seeing, Ron Burgundy words on the screen, they see the producer, who's my son, Noah. He's the one that does these. It's like a podcast. It's like this. It's like looking at this video, except for they're looking at him. And he's asking, when they're 14 years old, who are you dating this year? What did you do at church camp? Tell me about mom. Tell me about dad. What pets do you have? Well, you go through and you see the first year, it's great and everybody loves it. But it's when they come back the second year and you see, my God, how much young people will change over the course of 1 year. They're different humans, that's still the same element. So yeah, we make these like 15 to 20-minute videos and have absolute grandiose plans for this, but it's all I can do to keep up with heritage people right now.
Yeah, so tell me how that works though. So they're not very expensive to
Right.
do, as I see it, and I gather that to do those, you don't go to them; they come to you.
Yes, sir. They come to our studio, and that is that's our pinch point. That's our scaling issue, because it's really difficult to go to somebody's home when you're only going to interview for 45 minutes or an hour. And like when we do our heritage films, we come in with a movie studio. I mean, it's a lot. And we haven't found a way to do these and maintain the same level of quality and intimacy. It's hard to get a kid to focus, but when you drop them in a solid white studio where there's nothing in the room but a camera that they're looking at, and they're looking into the teleprompter, you have their focus, you have their attention, and they're always nervous at the beginning, but then once they start dialoguing, then they light up and you see, oh, there you are. There's the little guy in there.
Yeah. So if people are interested in this, you talked about you take a day or two to do the filming and then 6 weeks to do the editing. What kind of lead time
Hmm.
is generally involved before they? It sounds like you're pretty busy.
Yes, sir.
What kind of lead times involved in getting you to show up and wherever they are?
Yes, sir. We book Mondays and Thursdays, which allows us to be anywhere for 1 and 2 day films. And then when we have our signature films, which are the larger ones, like the international one I told you about, and they don't always have to be that crazy. Sometimes there's just 3 or 4 days, but we stay booked out about 3 months. And then we have a rule. Well, first of all, in 2021, I committed to working every single day. I love what I do. I love the families. There's other days that we're capable. I have a whole team that I work with. So anytime that there's somebody that's over 90 or there's significant health issues, then we just kind of we get there. We get it done if it needs to be done sooner. But for a general regular family, we stay booked out about 3 months. So you book 3 months into the future or further. We have bookings in 2026 already, so the calendar's wide open. And I have two other people that are capable of doing the interviews, which gives us more flexibility. I do, but gosh, 90% of them, I just don't want to stop. I love it. I love the families, but we're willing to grow. The busier we get, the more we're happy. We've built, I keep saying we've built a system so that everything within the Heritage Films universe is trainable, it's replicable, and we use traditional, call it Hollywood roles. Our camera, it's like learning a trade. The things that we do, it's trade based as opposed to art based, even though there's massive art behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And I was just, as I was looking through your website right before our interview, I also wanted to mention this because I don't think you've mentioned it yet. So, as Stan and I are located here in Arkansas, we have lots of farmers and ranchers here. And I saw on the site that you've got the signature film, which you've talked about, and then of course that classic heritage film, but you also have a farm and ranch film. So tell us a little bit about how that differs from these other projects that you do.
I cannot believe you asked that, and I love you for asking that. So this is as of last week. Of the 800 films, probably, I'm in Texas, and so a lot, more than half of our films are in the state of Texas, and a lot of them are farm and ranch families. And we noticed over the years that there's something different about these agrarian based. And I don't mean people that have a ranch, people that live in town and then go out and weekend ranchers. I mean, people that have multi-generational farms and ranches. We notice that there's a different level of intimacy. The land is literally a character in the movie, the way they would talk about it. So we launched last week. This is brand new. I haven't even put the link on the website, but we have farmandranchfilms.com. It's a heritage film at the root of it, but it's geared specifically for that type of family, the multi-generational farmers, ranchers, agrarian, rural people. And what's different about it is we treat the land itself as a character in the film. So there's more extensive drone work, there's more extensive outdoor. We try to incorporate, like we did a film with a 95-year-old dude on the southern border who still would get on his side-by-side and run his fence line every day, rain or shine. He's driving his fence line because he'd been doing it since the 40s. It's important. So Farm and Ranch Films is, think of it, I mean, you said it best in the introduction. You have your traditional films, you have your signature films, and just slightly different, but the same guts is the Farm and Ranch Films. It's still based on long form storytelling.
Yeah. So generally, how does that work in terms of the number of days that you're out filming? Because I guess, you've got to go to maybe some pretty remote places that are hard to get to. And how does that impact the investment people make in the film?
Yeah, generally speaking, those are going to be 3 days and more because at the base level, it'll be a minimum of a couple people we're talking to. The ones that we've done have been multi-generational via the interviews as well. So we may talk to Papa, we talk to Dad, and we talk to the three sons. Like that would be a very, very normal one. So a minimum of 3 days. And so the investment ends up being more in the 25 and up range.
Yeah,
And one of the things that we do, but it's funny, it only has a different title on it by having farmandranchfilms.com, but we've been doing these for ages. The other key difference is we have a day that's dedicated to the dirt itself, whether we're filming the beauty of the land or, the two sons that are out roping calves, we're going to film that. It's very real. I mean, this is what we've done. We've done it so many times. It needed to be its own approach.
I'm just thinking, like I said, we do estate plans for, farmers and ranchers, very prevalent here in Arkansas. And I'm just thinking how powerful that would be to be able to show some of that B-roll footage of grandpa driving his fence line every day. And, your dad, but him much younger, out roping cattle. And what an easy way to pass down that heritage of work ethic and how hard, long before you were on the planet, these guys were out here on the same land you're standing on today doing this same thing. I feel like it just really makes that connection that photos can't really fully capture.
Absolutely correct. Where this became real to me was when I had a rice farmer. Okay, Okay, no, I'll tell you a different story. I'll tell you about a timber farmer that we were filming up in Washington State. Whenever she was like the heiress, it's the wrong word, but she was the daughter. Her papa had started this company 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, and she now owned it. But when she was talking to me about the different definition of the word patience that timber farmers have compared to regular farmers or compared to you and I, compared to attorneys or compared to a media company, anything. They have a total different understanding of time than we do. And this is where I decided this needed to be its own thing, is they're planting things that their grandkids will cultivate. And they know there's going to be storms. They know there's going to be earthquakes up there. There's going to be all this stuff, but it doesn't matter because you do what you're supposed to do. And it was from the farmers and ranchers that I learned that people aren't really hiring us for mom and dad to tell their story. They are hiring us for that. But what they really, really want is they want the values of the generations before transferred because something has gotten lost in the last 20, 30 years. They want those values that made mom and dad what they are and were and are. They want as much of that as possible to go to their kids and beyond. And they're like, dang it, a film, maybe this will do it. I don't think anybody could ever articulate that. But after looking at all these films we've done, that's what's really happening. That's what they want passed on. And we try to use storytelling and really good cameras to do it.
That is so cool. My family owns timberland here in Arkansas, about 1,000 acres. And it's interesting because that's our family heritage. With the first grandchild, our child who's now 16, when he was born, my dad planted a plot of timber so that it's pine trees here in Arkansas. And the pine trees take about 20 years. And so when that first grandchild was born, my dad planted a plot of timber for him and said, well, this will be ready to cut and this will pay for college when he's ready to go to college. Of course, now we laugh and we're like, well, it'll pay for his first year of college. Things have gotten a lot more expensive since then. But my dad has gone through and done that with each of the grandkids that have come along. They get their own plot of land. He plants it, but it is timber. That's why I love this idea of farming and ranch. It's very different to some degree than just, there is that tie to the earth, to a specific place, a specific field, a specific building. And so I love that's a piece of the work that you do. Very cool. And Stan grew up on a farm also.
Oh, good.
He grew up on a dairy farm, which I guess sadly is no longer in your family, right, Stan? But how cool would that have been to have some of this footage captured from that?
Yeah, let's have that thought sitting right here. Yeah.
We'll see. There you go. There you go. Well, Chance, this has been awesome. Is there anything else you want our listeners to know before we run out of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I want them to know that what we do is very white glove. It's very professional. It's very slick. It's very elegant. It's very awesome. And it's also unnecessary. At the end of the day, if you have some person in your life that you love and you care deeply about, get your iPhone out and sit down with them and film them and just freaking talk to them. You don't have to Barbara Walters them. Just visit with them. Chase your own honest curiosities about them and their background because it's part of you and you'll have it. And you can just let it sit on your iPhone because there will come a day where you'll be like, I am so glad I sat down with Dad because that day's coming for us all. Now we do it, it's going to be slick and it's going to be awesome. But at the end of the day, it's the stories, it's the recollections, it's the anecdotes, it's Dad putting his hand on Mom's knee that you're going to long for. So do it with or without us. That's it.
I think that's great. And it really shows your passion, not just for your business, but the passion for your mission. So we very much appreciate you wrapping it up with that. We do want to encourage all of our listeners to get out there and get this done before it's too late. We don't want you to miss out. This technology exists, these companies exist, and so be sure that you take the opportunity to really put those things to good use. And so for all of our listeners, we want to thank you for listening. This has been the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today was Chance McClain, and to connect with Chance and learn more about how to get started making one of these heritage films, you can visit yourheritagefilm.com. We will also be sure to link that for you in the show notes, so go and check it out. Chance, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.